My name's John Roberts. I was a teacher through the Teach First programme in 2007 and I taught for 3 years in a challenging school in Manchester. In my second year I took on assistant head role in the senior leadership team as in charge of data and assessment, and through that set up a company called sixthdomain, which set up the reward system, which is now used across schools and has been credited by Ofsted as changing the behaviour in those schools, which is an edtech platform to track behaviour essentially. I also set up edapt, which is the only trade union alternative in the UK, providing the core insurance services to teachers who need support in an allegation or an employment issue. I think you absolutely have to understand what goes on in the classroom and what goes on more broadly in the school, because if you don't, you really can't apply that to the patchwork quilt of what an edtech company is supposed to do. You know, the developer a reward system, we constantly have conversations about how he thinks the UI needs to be and how I think the UX needs and the UI needs to be to make sure that it's applicable to teachers. And we have to remember that teachers are essentially at the heart of our user base, and that's what we're building it for. And if we don't build it for teachers and if we don't have the experience of teachers in building the software, they won't use it, and it won't have both the commercial and social impacts that it should have as a business. It's very important that edtech entrepreneurs are talking to each other and feeding off the same issues that they've got and the same successes, to make sure that, you know, we can only increase the quality of edtech that's coming into schools and therefore have both the social and commercial impact that everybody wants from setting something up. I'm adamant that we have to be set up in the north of England. I'm passionate about being in the north of England, and you know, it might just be part of my nature that says, well, we don't need to be with the rest of everybody else and we can do it elsewhere. It is more difficult. It involves sitting on a train for me quite a lot to actually come down and see everybody else that is in North London or in central London. But I think it's really important that, you know, schools are across the UK. They're not just in London. In fact, only 12% of pupils are taught across the UK are taught in London. And so it's really important to get the experiences of the teachers who are across the UK in rural schools, in northern schools, in schools that are outside the M25 into edtech as well. And you know, look, at the end of the day, it's cheaper to be outside of London. There's just as good people outside of London who you can employ, and I think, you know, there's no issue with being there. You've just got to have the passion to do it for yourself. If you are teaching in a school, you have the best pilot stage you can have to try out what you're wanting to develop. And of course, you know, you might need money to set up in the first place, but you know, the reward system was built by myself and, you know, and helped out by a couple of the other people in the school to get going in the first place. And I think you have the capacity there to run a really good pilot in the school, and then actually take it to an investor, whether that is you know, a big investor or just a small seed investor, and say, look, this is the success that we can have. We've already had a proven pilot. We've got the chalkboard success already. You know, you can get investment if your product is good. You have something like 40,000 interactions as a teacher every single day, which is, of all of the professions out there, probably the most. And I think that in itself teaches you to be ultra agile, ultra creative, ultra flexible, but also able to handle a huge variety of different situations every day, which is exactly the same, which is all you have to do as an entrepreneur.